This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, truth seekers and true crime junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hit the Road Jack, Finding the Zodiac. Today we have Nolan Del Campo with us. I'd like to welcome him to the show.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. I'm kind of excited. This is where we're going to put together all that information that we've learned so far about this killer. Kind of hopefully weed out, I think, some of the so-called facts that the internet would like us to believe, and at the same time we're not able to exclude Jack at this point, so we are going to continue with his attributes after we do the summary of the Zodiac information. I'm excited. How about you?
I am too.
All right. So basically, I'm going to throw up this PowerPoint presentation so everybody can see what's going on here. That way you can pause it, go back and read it if you need to at a later time. Is that coming up? There it is. All right. So summary of the Zodiac descriptions and evidence in the cases. And I'm going to take us actually back as far as Edwards and Domingos in 1962, because I think it's very important that you establish this MO that seems to be circulating around these crimes. So Edwards and Domingos was a remote lovers lane type murder. Once again, the gun that was used was a .22 caliber. The ammo that was used was a Super X Winchester Western long rifle. They did find military affiliation boots, these wing walker boots, size 10.5 at the scene of the crime, and that there were pre-cut rope pieces shorter than 3 feet. They did indicate that they believed that Linda had to tie up Robert and then Robert tie up Linda, which we already are very familiar with that in the Lake Berryessa case, but I wanted to be able to show that this is a running MO. Now, there was also fire attached to this particular crime, so the suspects stacked the bodies on top of each other in a lean-to and tried to set them on fire. They found the matches, the attempt to set the fire, but it did not catch. On the Swindles murder in 1964, the gun used again is a .22 caliber. There is purportedly the wallet is taken, but this is not a robbery. I also believe this is the case where the watch that is possibly linked to Sherry Jo Bates was taken. There is a military affiliation again. This was a .22 long rifle, and then I'm pretty sure that the ammo, though I could not find that information, was consistent with the Super X Winchester brand, which again had been tracked back to Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is another military affiliation. So the
former military or current military, Swindle?
Yes. Swindle was actively in the Navy at that point in time.
And this was closer to San Diego, correct? Well, the other one was more Central Coast, not far from Santa Barbara, I believe. The Domingo? Correct.
I want to say Gaviota, somewhere in that area. Yeah, there's actually a slew of crimes in the Gaviota area, which case they just hemmed up the Golden State Killer, Joseph D'Angelo, over some of those Gaviota murders. So I wonder how they're going to play into the presentation that I have, since I had initially thrown them into the pot, thinking that there's a possibility that they are consistent with the same killer. We'll see. Now in Sherry Jo Bates, there was a knife that was used. And of course I have all these methods are in red so that we can see by gun, by rope, by fire, by knife, all the things that we're going to hear about in the future from the Zodiac in his Halloween card. So basically Sherry Jo Bates was a knife that was used, 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch blade handle. there had been evidence that a handle piece of this knife was left behind at the scene of the crime. I think this is why there were two men back with flashlights searching after the murder was completed that was witnessed by one of the neighbors in the area. There was a watch that was found, and now law enforcement attributed that to being the suspect's watch because it had been ripped off his hand in that fight with Sherry Jo Bates. But there may be a chance that this is that cross connection that we're looking at, and we're going to talk about how those work out. He did make a reference to time in short, which again is Black Dahlia, and the hair that was found clutched in Sherry Jo Bates' hand was a reddish brown, dark to light blonde. I kind of wanted to cover that just for a second because that two-tone hair is kind of what we heard about from Officer Folk in the Stein murder. He indicated that it appeared to be a lighting issue, but he thought it was green underneath and then a reddish brown on top, I believe. We're going to cover that here in a minute, but he also saw this two-tone effect. So I thought that was interesting how they went from reddish brown to dark to light blonde.
In Sherry Jo Bates, that knife, the blade side sounds so small. It's amazing that you would murder someone with a blade that small.
It is a very small blade, and I will show you one that was found in Jack's possession, and half the handle was missing, and the tip is definitely broken on that knife, which is something that he indicated that he had broke the knife off inside of her. Now, of course, law enforcement reports vary and go back and forth, but I would think it would be awfully hard in an autopsy to miss a tip of a blade. Even if it was microscopic, it's still going to show up on x-rays. So, and I don't know why he would lie about that in his letters, since when he is taking credit for these crimes and talking about these crimes, he's delivering information that only the killer would know, which is how they pegged him for the letters to begin with. Well, to continue in Sherry Jo Bates, there was also the military affiliation with the Wing Walker boots, size 10.5. And there was a use of teletype paper. Let's remind you, Jack was a ham radio operator. Teletype is used at this point in time in military, governments, newspapers, any type of media industry where getting information on demand is pretty much the thing that they're using this teletype for. And Jack owning one, and we see him fixing it in 1962. We know that he's right there in the realm of being able to have the paper that they're talking about in regards to the confession letter for Sherry Jo Bates. He also made phone calls to law enforcement, and he sent in letters. Now, when they came back and said that they matched this to Edwards and Dominguez in 1962, it must be because they also received phone calls and letters. That's my thought, right? I mean, what else did they use?
Wasn't there also something intriguing about Sherry Jo Bates' father? Some sort of weird connection.
Yes, he worked for the Navy as well, and he worked, I believe, in one of the labs in the Bay Area that I want to say Novato, but that actually works on the bombs. Like or at least that was the information I was given when Harriet had done a search on him.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So where did I go there? Okay, so phone calls and letters. Now we have the Lake Herman Road evidence. The gun was used, a .22 caliber. The ammo again is Super X. The vehicles that were actually witnessed in witness statements from the reports are a white Chevy Impala, which this is probably where the author that is blaming Dorr for having been the Zodiac Killer out of Fairfield had done a 3D view and found what he claimed to be a white Chevy Impala in his driveway. The man actually owned a light blue Chevy Nova. So his connection to Paul Dorr saying that he was the Zodiac Killer because of this vehicle that he was able to see in that view is not true. The other car, this white Chevy Impala, was seen twice by two different witnesses, and then the blue Valiant, which was somebody who bothered another person who just happened to report that experience that night because of the news that broke on the murder. In Mike Majot's case, he survived this attack, and he indicated a white male, 26 to 30 years of age, but he only caught a side profile of him. He said he was short, about 5'8", 195 to 200 pounds, real heavy set, not blubbery, but real beefy. He had short curly hair, light brown, almost blonde. So again, we're going back to this. There is definitely some consistency there. The clothing at this time was blue short sleeve shirt, as reported by Mike Mageau. The gun that was used this time is different. It's a 9mm Luger. The suspect called the police department again in regards to this. The ammo that was used was Western, and it was written in a letter by the Zodiac in order to take credit and prove that he was the killer of these kids. The problem here with Mike Mageau is there's no mentions of glasses, which we have clearly established that the Zodiac Killer wears glasses. So he may not have seen absolutely as much as he claims to have seen. And then he goes on to ID 6-foot tall, bald, blubbery, 250-pound Arthur Lee Allen, which isn't even consistent with his statement at all.
Right.
So we know that, so we know there are phone calls and letters in this case too. Then we make it to Lake Berryessa with Brian Hartnell, and we have a suspect description of white male, 20 to 30 years of age by voice concept, which we're going to get to the voice concept. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but he said he had a drawl that was moderate in sound, sounded uneducated but not illiterate. At 5'9" to 6 feet tall, 200 to 250 pounds, stocky build, stomach hanging over trousers. Well, he basically just described Jack at that point. He claims seeing brown hair seen in the eye hole, which again, that could be subject to light. So if he is standing over the top of him and the hood is shading that hair, it may very well be a reddish brown, but he's just seeing the dark of the color because there's so much light out at this point in time that's surrounding them. So he also stated that the man walked with a lumber. The clothing was a windbreaker, blue or black, dark pleated slacks, blue or black, which were old fashioned, that he was wearing gloves. This is interesting because in the Paul Stein murder, there are gloves left behind. And this was heard by Mr. Archie White, who was one of the first responders on the scene, and overheard Brian Hartnell telling another responder that the suspect was wearing gloves. He was also wearing Wingwalker boots, 10.5 R or D, military affiliation again. Now, the information given to Mr. White when he arrived on the scene was the MO was that he wanted money and car keys. He was an ex-con from Colorado going to Mexico. He says, I have to tie you up and going to have to stab you. So those are interesting statements. Have to, as in he's hired for a job, is kind of how I felt. Right, Nolan?
Yeah, I mean, could mean that, yes.
I mean, I have to tie you up.
Whether it was his demons talking to him or whether it was set out ahead of time.
Good point. Good point. He also used rope, small rubber coated clothesline that was pre-cut to 2.5 to 3 feet. Cecilia again tied up Brian, just like we heard in the Dominguez Edwards case. He did have a gun on him on his right hip, which was Brian thought to be a .45 caliber semi-automatic. He had used a knife in this particular crime that was contained in a wooden sheath on the left hip. They stated it was homemade with a hardwood handle with 2 brass rivets and 1-inch cotton tape wrapped around the handle. The blade again was thin, 3/4 to 1 inch, sharpened on both sides, approximately 9 to 12 inches long. He claimed combat style, or we get this whole idea of a bayonet, which they've tried to, portray to everybody. But clearly, the description of this knife does not describe a bayonet. Would you think?
No.
Bayonet to me,
much larger, yeah, and harder. Yeah.
And probably all black. I mean, I feel like bayonets are not like these sparkly, shiny colors, at least in my mind. He also had a black cloth hooded ceremonial style mask that was square on top and came down to the shoulders and over the chest, almost to the waist, with a sewn zodiac symbol at about the chest. Now, like the Texarkana Phantom, there was a hood evidently involved. So there is that cross connection there. Maybe that's what he was attempting to tie it into. Terry B had made a comment that the fact that he didn't kill Brian Hartnell was probably pre-planned in order to be able to promote the fear behind the mask, which I'm kind of leaning towards and agreeing with almost, because Hartnell says that the only way he stopped stabbing him was that he played dead. Well, even if you laid there as still as you could be, you're still going to be breathing. Why did the Zodiac allow him to continue to breathe and not finish him off? So maybe Terry B's right about that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think he is.
Yeah. Brian Hartnell said he was wearing clip-on glasses. The Zodiac wrote on the car door calling out the other murders. He also called in this murder. What I did learn is that the suspect vehicle had 5.5-inch tread width on the tires and a 52-inch between the wheel span. So this should identify some type of vehicle. I started to work on this and I haven't gotten fully into it yet to determine what the wheelbase of this vehicle is based on that 52 inches. But they did obtain fingerprints and palm prints at the crime scene and at the phone booth. Cecilia Shepard actually had an opportunity to give her version of what occurred, and she stated he was a man with a hood and his face was covered. He was wearing black pants. So this is the first time we're hearing, instead of a dark navy blue or a black, she was very, very adamant, obviously, about these black pants. And for it being a female, I take her thoughts on color a little bit more serious. I'm sorry, no offense, Nolan, but typically females. What's that?
I'm colorblind.
Well, and many people don't even know to differentiate between the colors. So they just say dark, could have been black, could have been blue. She adamantly stated they were black pants. The man asked for money, but he didn't take any. So she's aware that he has made this claim. And my kind of guess here at this point, him asking for the wallet and keys, this is the message that is due to be relayed. And so maybe it isn't actually physical evidence he's leaving at the crime scenes as much as he's leaving a victim alive to tell the story of what occurred. He asked for wallet and keys, but look what happens in Paul Stein. He actually takes those two items. So there's a connectivity there. She says also he was wearing glasses with dark clip-on sunglasses over the hood. So she's the one that stated that he actually had glasses on underneath. And obviously by virtue that the clip-on glasses would need something to clip onto, there would naturally have to be glasses underneath that hood in order for those clip-ons to clip on. She stated he had a black pistol. Now, we're going to get into the witnesses and possible suspects at this state because we've heard what the victims have to say, but there was some extremely interesting information coming out. A Dr. R. Clifton and his 16-year-old son, David Lee Clifton, were at about 6:30 p.m. north of the park headquarters, about 0.8 of a mile from the crime scene. Witnessed a white male, 5'10", heavy build, dark trousers, and a long sleeves dark shirt with red in it. Nothing in his hands, walking north along a hill area between the beach and the road. When David sighted him, the man turned around and left in a southerly direction up the hill. This is another thing I kind of want to track to see which direction in regards to the crime spree that this man shot off in. And we don't know if he didn't just go off to a car. Clearly, if there are tread marks and there is the casts being made of tire prints at the scene, this man was close by his vehicle and was mobile and then actually showed up to the crime scene at Lake Berryessa in his own vehicle. Now, does this tread pattern and this wheelbase pattern match a Chevy Impala or this late model Chevy as being indicated in regards to this second suspect? I don't know. I would have thought that would have been something they could have sorted out way back then. The dean of the three girls who witnessed this person in the light blue Chevy actually makes a very interesting report. He says he calls the sheriff first to say that the sheriff should interview these girls. And he says between 3 and 4:30 p.m., 2 miles north of A&W Root Beer Stand on Knoxville Road, the three gals from college were there. They witnessed a male approximately 40 years of age, 6 feet tall. Now that's a huge difference, because the girls in their statements all are somewhere around 28 to 30 years. Why did the dean say 40? And was this something that should have been corrected? And were they actually seeing Jack?
Or yeah, was it the same person? We don't know.
Exactly. I mean, 5'10", 6 foot is fairly relative. 40 years is a huge difference. And where does that number come up? I mean, I just can't see the dean making that mistake when the other three girls are all reporting 28 to 30 years of age. Yes. I might explain the description of them as well.
Didn't the girls also see someone at the lake And
I'm going into that, but this report came in first, so I'm going chronologically with how these reports came in. So one of these three girls, or all these three girls, went to the dean of their school. The dean of their school then reported to the sheriff. This is what they said. He was 40 years of age and 6 feet tall. So I don't know how it got changed to 28-30 unless they were trying to force fit that age bracket into the voice concept that Brian Hartnell had stated, that 20, what did he say? 20 to 30 years of age by voice concept. So were they trying to make that information conform? I don't know, but the dean reported 40 years old. Miss Linda Lee, one of the first teenager or college students, indicated a male, approximately 30 years of age, 6 feet tall, 200 pounds, stocky build, straight dark hair, neatly combed, medium colored skin, round face, and fairly nice looking. Clothing was black short sleeve sweater shirt and dark blue slacks. So there is some similarities there in the color of the clothing. The vehicle was a late model sky blue Chevrolet. Tail lights were long rather than round, which is how they discovered it was more of a late model 1966 or newer vehicle. But they did not report glasses. So in their reports, I found nothing that talked about glasses. The second college student, Miss Joanne, she reports a male, approximately 28 years of age, 6 feet to 6'2", 225 pounds, well built, black hair, possibly styled, parted on the left, round eyes, thin lips, medium nose, straight eyebrows, small ears, rather nice looking. Again, these are not describing the composite that we see in the Presidio. So I tend to believe that we're dealing with two different people here. Clothing is black short sleeve sweater shirt bunched up in the front with white t-shirt showing in the back and dark trousers. Again, she reports the same type of vehicle, only she says that it is sky blue. And she stated that the man walked from south to north. Miss Linda, which is the second Linda in this actual sighting, only says male, vehicle 1966 to 1967, light blue Chevrolet with California plates. It's a two-door sedan and taillights rather long rather than round. Rear window is tinted quite dark. So now if we go back and remember what I said about that blue ice blue Chevy that Nora had, not only was the rear window not tinted, but it was a 4-door, not a 2-door. Or maybe, I got myself confused. Either way, it's just more proof that that wasn't the vehicle that was there at the crime. A Zodiac descriptions go on with the 4 teenagers in the Paul Stein murder. They seen the suspect in the front seat, mid passenger side, with the victim slumped partially over his lap. He appeared to be searching his pockets, appeared to be wiping fingerprints from interior of the cab, leaning over the victim to the driver's compartment. He exited the passenger side door and wiped it clean of prints, and then went to the driver's side door and proceeded to wipe the exterior of the left door area. Here, he obviously knows that he's left fingerprints behind, and he's clearly trying to clean up. Left walking north on Cherry Street toward the Presidio. He was described by the teenagers as a white male, adult, 35 to 45 years of age, 5'10", 190 pounds, paunchy stomach, crew cut, reddish blonde hair. So here we've got the reddish statement again. We've got this blonde statement again. The clothing was a navy blue or black parka, type jacket, dark baggy trousers. Again, just like we heard in Lake Berryessa. Eyeglasses with plastic frames. And we got Jack over here actually with 2 sets of clear frames, basically. These ones have got a little bit of a brown tint to them at the top, but definitely clear at the bottom, so you can actually see his face. I think he was a little egotistical and probably narcissistic.
No doubt.
Now, SFPD actually puts out 3 different descriptions. In their bolo, they say white male, early 40s, heavy build. All right, early 40s. They went with an older age automatically. I mean, 35 to 45, they just smacked him into the 40s. Heavy build, crew cut, reddish blonde hair. On October 13th, when they put out the initial composite, it was white male, now 25 to 30 years of age. What the heck? Like, you're 25 to 30 isn't even a match to the 35 to 40 that the teenagers said.
But also, didn't Zodiac say that when he does these crimes, he kind of disguises himself?
Absolutely. I believe he absolutely knows the countermeasures to makeup, dyeing of hair, changing his glasses, making himself appear different, maybe even facial apparatuses. I have no idea. He seems to be well with it. Now, they also changed the height from 6 feet to 5'8", 5'9", crew cut, reddish brown hair. The supplementing wanted poster that comes out on October 18th changes again, says white male, 35 to 45. Now he's approximately 5'8". He just keeps getting shorter in the progression, which makes no sense because we're going to hear what Folk has to say. And they say short brown hair, possibly red tint, heavy build. Either way, this reddish brown theme has been coming up since Jerry Joe Bates. Clothing, dark brown trousers, navy blue or black jacket, dark navy blue or black parka type jacket, and it says should have many blood stains on his person. And they're correct. This is what I have discussed with Terry, is that there should have been definitely some blood on this man as he's walking down the Presidio. Either way, in all three, it says he's wearing eyeglasses, then it says he's wearing heavy rim glasses, and then it says wears glasses. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm just going to roll with the composite. The composite shows basically a clear frame. Ooh, go back. Basically a clear frame right over here in the bottom right-hand corner. So we're going to roll with it. It was likely that these were circa. So this is 1971 for Jack right here. So we're only talking a short year or so after. And we know with health insurance, you can only get your new glasses. What is it? Once every 2 years? It may have been even farther in between back then. Huh. The evidence that was collected at Paul Stine's murder was a gun, it's ammo used, 9mm semi-automatic, possibly a new model Browning. The ammo was a Winchester Western, and 2 portions of the victim's shirt. So you guys, I finally answered this question. It does appear that he took enough of Paul Stine's shirt. As you can see down here at the bottom, there's a rather large chunk, not simply this one thin piece that we see here in this letter. Or in this picture, we can see that there are other pieces to the backside of the shirt that is missing. So the killer mailed one piece in with the Paul Stine letter, and I found that he mailed the other one in with the bus bomb, I believe it was. So we do see a second piece, and I'm glad I finally answered that question. There were fingerprints found in this particular crime. It tells Paul Stine to drive towards Washington and Laurel area or near Park or Presidio, near Maple Street, but he stops at Cherry Street in Washington. Victim's wallet and ID and taxi keys are actually taken. So again, this is where I say he made the statement to Brian Hartnell, I want your wallet and your keys, but he doesn't take them. And then in this particular case, he is taking extra time at the crime scene to rifle through Paul Stine's pockets to obtain these things. And obviously he's reaching over into the driver's compartment because he's probably taking the keys out of the ignition, would be my thought.
Yeah, I would think so.
Now, they said the meter was still running, so I would think that the car would have to be turned on, or no, maybe that thing runs if you're just sitting and waiting and not running the car.
Yeah, because once the keys are taken out, the meter should stop.
Well.
So I don't know, were there 2 sets of keys? But he took one set, so I don't know.
Well, maybe one set that was in the vehicle that kept the vehicle running and the meter running was for the cab, and that actual key isn't literally on Paul Stine's key ring. Maybe Paul Stine's key ring that he took is actually one for his house or, a multitude of other things. I keep some of my keys separate, one from the next.
Yeah, it's kind of odd. It's hard to say.
Yeah. Officer Folk, he does a report on 11/12 of 69 saying suspect fitting the description of the Zodiac Killer was walking easterly on Jackson Street and then turned north on Maple Street. Did not stop because Bolo was for Negro male. He was a white male, 35 to 45 years of age, about 5'10", 180 to 200 pounds, medium to heavy build. Crew cut, light colored hair, possibly graying in the rear. May have been lighting that caused this effect. Dark blue waist-length zipper type jacket, navy or royal blue, elastic cuffs and waistband, zipper partway up, brown wool pants, pleated type, baggy in the rear. So they also commented rust brown. He may have been wearing low-cut shoes. Not in a hurry, walked with a shuffling lope. So that matches the lumber that Brian Hartnell stated. Slightly bent forward with his head down. They guessed Welsh ancestry possibly, and stated that eyeglasses with plastic frames. So now we're back to that plastic frame thing. We actually have it in the officer's own words. eyeglasses, plastic frames. So some of the other consistencies that fall in line here for the final summary here is that they're areas of remote lover lanes or hangouts. The military size 10.5 wing walker boots are consistent. There's a time theme that's occurring, and the Zodiac suspect uses the headlights of his car to obscure himself, his vehicle, and his approach with victims 1 through 4. Suspect also uses a flashlight taped to the barrel of his gun. Tape becomes a theme in a later communication. Suspect uses Super X and Western ammo on the victims. He uses 3 different types of guns, a 22, a 9mm, and a reported scene of a 45 caliber. The 9mm Luger versus the 9mm Browning. Claims by Vallejo PD that a J.C. Higgins Model 80 or High Standard Model 101 was used, and bullets were Super X copper-coated long rifle by Western, just recently sold as early as 1967. And the bullet has a right-hand twist or a clockwise twist with 6 lands and grooves, which is called a 6 and 6. And I wanted to compare that to other reports to see if those types of things are established in things like Texarkana, Eldridge and Hogan, Black Dahlia, Swindles, Edwards and Dominguez. I mean, on down the line. The firing pin impressions are consistent with Jack's 22 rifle, which is not, I believe, what they wanted to say it was, the J.C. Higgins. And we talked about that much early in the presentation from Stephen Dewhurst's book. We have fingerprints and palm prints. He walked with a shuffling lope or a lumber. We have the by knife, by gun, by rope, by fire. He did make a statement that he was an escapee from Deer Lodge Mountains, Montana State Prison, and he killed a guard per Graysmith's book. Now, I want to break apart Graysmith's book because the statement to the rescuer, Mr. White, by Hartnell was that the suspect claimed he was an ex-con from Colorado. That is a very, very much different state, obviously. Colorado and Montana don't sound anything alike. So I don't know if Graysmith was just, again, fantasizing in that part of his book, but I know that Jack was newly separated from his second wife, who her father actually lived in Colorado and worked for the prison system. Now he's wearing a black hooded mask, cloth covering the entire head and shoulders, coming down almost to the suspect's waist. The victim states on the front of a 4-cornered type mask, similar to paper bag in style, was a symbol. The symbol described as white, approximately 3.5 inches in diameter, with a symmetrical cross. On the eyelets of the mask was a pair of clip-on glasses. Zodiac Killer made phone calls. He wrote letters. We talked about the gloves. There's no property taken. Even when a wallet is taken, it's not supposedly because it's a robbery. The female was stabbed in both breasts and groin. This is kind of a cross connection back to Sherry Jo Bates, Black Dahlia, and the lipstick killings. Zodiac Killer wrote 3 or more letters at one time in many of these serial killings, and he wrote the words himself, cipher and code. The no address letter matches up with Jack, who has no address at this point in time. He's living on a converted bus that he's made into a home, or my assumption is that he got this bus from his brother-in-law and or his sister-in-law and brother, who had it as early as 1963. Vehicles witnessed was December 1968 at the Lake Herman Road attack. 2 raccoon hunters witnessed a 1960s white Chevy Impala 4-door hardtop. Another couple had a strange experience with a possible Blue Valiant. And there was a second sighting of a Chevy Impala by a sheep herder. And on 4th of July, 1969, the no address letter where Zodiac himself admits that a male Negro, 40 to 45, shabbily dressed, seen him get into a brown car. So I am still searching those cars. Suspect was on his way to Mexico. We've heard this in many of the other cases. He's having fun or a good time. He wants to show them that this is a theme for him. He references movies, books, and newspapers. He has a theme of jackrabbits and Groucho Marx, and a knowledge of how to conceal the identity, fingerprints, DNA, and, as you stated, Nolan, his identity. Now, going back to the telephone call, on October 22nd, 1969, the Dunbar Show receives a call from the Zodiac Killer. It is denied that the person who calls in is the Zodiac because Hartnell says himself that the Zodiac's voice wasn't a match. because it was older and deeper than the one heard in the series. So, and then we hear a husky voice is printed in the newspaper. So we're again not talking about somebody who is, I think, as Hartnell stated, 26 to 30 years of age. We're now talking about somebody who sounds a bit older. It was suggested that the caller be referred to as Sam during the conversation, which I thought was maybe even an interesting dig for Son of Sam Murders, where he claims that he was part of a group too, right?
Yes. There's a book, Ultimate Evil, where it basically says that Berkowitz was part of a satanic cult, and he wasn't the only killer. There were several killers in the cult.
Right. And I think the cult thing is just to give it some sensationalism, but likely just a group of stupid, mad people.
What's
that?
They were Satan worshipers with links to other Satan worshipers in other parts of the United States.
Gotcha.
Including Los Angeles and North Dakota.
Oh. Well, I don't have anything on North Dakota, but Los Angeles for sure. Dr. Donald Lund was a psychiatrist at the Atascadero State Hospital, so I don't find this to be too coincidental that he was hired by Hearst to work with Patty Hearst after her abduction and purported mind washing. He also had some issue with Herb Cain. So the fact that Donald Lund was actively a doctor, I believe, at the Napa State Hospital at the time when this call came in, is kind of an interesting connection there. The victim thought suspect was possibly 20 to 30 years age by voice concept, but he later then says much older and deeper than the one that's heard on the series of telephone calls. Now, this actually goes into KGO TV, so I put some information together on that. We can see that the call sign for like a ham radio operator, KGO radio's former owner, is General Electric. And we know that Jack worked for General Electric as well in 1962 and 1963. They come up actually a lot in this. They're the ones that bought the Ramsey's business for pennies on the dollar after he got caught up in the middle of all the legal issues with his daughter's death. In 1969, a man called San Francisco police identifying himself as a serial killer known as the Zodiac and agreed to call Dunbar during AM San Francisco's live broadcast if either attorney Melvin Belli or F. Lee Bailey. And we know how we feel about those attorneys, right?
Yeah.
Those are the mob's attorneys. So basically let's see, Dunbar was born in Dearborn, Michigan. That takes us back to some Michigan roots. He actually was working at the radio station for Fort Riley in Kansas. He later worked as a rock DJ at WXYZ and in Detroit at WSU, in New Orleans, where he was also a station manager, and in Chicago before moving west to work for KGO in 1963. So he came in 1963 to the California area. And it says in addition to his radio work, he also hosted a popular AM San Francisco morning talk program on KGO TV, Channel 7, for many years, beginning in 1965. So again, we have that San Francisco connection, and the killer chooses to call that radio station of all places. This is where we get back into Jack now. So we want to hear a little bit from him, but I'm going to start out this conversation here with Dennis is calling Jack. He says, "Hello, Jack. What is going on?" Jack said, "Just sitting here thinking about how the hell I could get to the Bitterroot Mountains." Dennis said, "I know the feeling of not having a vehicle. Well, I was calling you because I wanted to talk to you about something, but I wanted to let you know that it would stay just between you and I." Jack said, "Well, I'm here. Or here I am." Dennis said, "Well, I think I have discovered something very interesting, and I think you know what I'm talking about, don't you?" Jack said, "Yeah, I do." Dennis said, "Jack, I will say this much. You have become the most interesting person I have ever met. I won't hold any of it against you. I'm probably the only one that understands." And Jack says, "What are you going to do? Write a book?" Dennis, "That's exactly what I was thinking about doing." And Jack says, we're going to cue up what he says, and then I will follow.
Cut inside his throat lately, so. Okay, well, that's all right.
I know that was extremely hard to hear. It's very low. I'm going to tell you what he does say is, "I haven't cut anybody's throat lately. I got tired of doing it." So we're going to replay that audio one more time.
Cut inside his throat lately, so. Okay, well, that's all right.
He got tired of doing it, he says. Such an interesting statement. either way, that goes on to continue with the conversation, which we have already covered this back in the beginning of the presentation. So I'm going to let anybody else, they can pause and read this and see how this goes down. But it's very interesting to note that that Dennis actually comes right out and asks him if he is the Zodiac, and Jack says, let me see what time it is. Instead of saying no, or you've got it wrong, or I'm responsible for this, let me see what time it is his actual statement. So there is, let's see, there is more conversation, in which case Dennis is now trying to talk with Jack about writing the book and what that would mean. So we're going to cue up that second audio, and we're going to hear from Jack again.
You know what I mean? But I wouldn't want to. Well, after it's written as fiction, yeah, and after I'm gone, which some days I don't think it'll be long. Some days I feel like it'll be a long time. Yeah, 20 years from now, huh? Yeah, right. Right. I understand. I don't want to put anything out there that's going to bring a prosecution before you're gone. You know, that's not my intention. You know? Yeah. I just kick myself in the ass for not, you know, just listening to you closer, because I never in a million years thought that, you know. Most of the things I can deny, and they have no proof. Right, it could just be like circumstantial. Yeah. Right. Right. I'm not too worried about it. It's what the people I know would think. Right, right. I see what you're saying. If it was a known fact that it was me.
Wow, those are some heavy statements. So this literally sounds like somebody having a casual conversation about maybe they stole a wallet or something, right? Are you there, Nolan?
Oh, yeah. No, I just know it's way more. It's that he's admitting he's Zodiac.
Well, I know that that's what he's admitting, because that's the ending of this particular phone call, but it like he's so nonchalant about it. So just matter of fact that there's no denial. There's no, what are you talking about there? I mean, he literally just rolls right on along with this as natural as any other Sunday conversation would go. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us into the evidence of Jack. Now, we did see that at one point in time, the cleft chin was actually removed out of the composite, which I think has kind of been a key characteristic that was identifying, obviously, Jack. We can see the cleft right here. We can see it right here. Very large, broad, wide chin. The physical description on this site says approximately 5'8" to 5'10" in height, curly brown or light reddish brown hair, worn in a crew cut, wearing horn rimmed glasses, which we can see over here. These are the different styles of horn rimmed glasses. Of course, colors can vary as well. We have some that are full frame. We have some that are partial frame, and Jack had actually both. He describes the same type of clothing, a medium or slightly stocky build. One survivor describes the Zodiac as having that odd gait. So, of course, that's back to that lumber and the loping walk. Jack did have, per Dennis, one leg shorter than the other due to a back injury that he had surgery for, and that caused him to walk with that lumber or lope. So Jack looks to have preferred light-colored or clear horn-rimmed glasses. And this is a picture of him in 1969 at age 41. So fitting right in line. Composites given by witness that included a police officer. Now, I ask everybody, judge for yourself. The composites are obviously dead on, but Jack's stats in 1969 was 5'10.5", 225 pounds with a paunch at 41 years of age in 1972. We got about 5 minutes here, it looks like. So his shoe size is a 10.5.
The two on top match each other, and the two on top on the bottom match each other. But going down, they look like different people a little bit.
Exactly.
But is he older there? Yeah.
Yes. This one is 1973, and this one is 1971. So it's a 2-year difference. And
Those
he's not
faces
wearing this
more round and fatter. Okay.
Right. Right. He did seem to gain some weight by 1971, 72. He was fairly heavy. He looked to me to be well heavier than 225 pounds. Jack was said to have reddish brown hair, but I've seen him dye his hair, so it may have been a dye as well. Handwriting, linguistics, and graphology supports that Jack and the Zodiac Killer are one and the same. Jack has lived in all the areas discussed in these cases and has family in many of them: Riverside, Berkeley, Alameda, San Francisco, Santa Clara, San Jose, South Lake Tahoe, Sacramento, Nyack, Mount Auburn, Roseville, Texas, Minnesota, and his mother was in Chicago, Illinois at one point. Jack watched his father shoot a man in the face over a liquor bottle when he was a young kid during Prohibition. His dad may very well have been running liquor as a long-haul truck driver as well. Jack watched a tractor turn over on and pin his father, and Jack walked away not warning anyone. His father died 3 days later, and that changed Jack's life. Jack believed he was the man of the house, but his mother felt otherwise, and Jack took to the road at 14. Computer technology. He was highly trained from 3 different militaries that he has served during an era of codes and ciphers. Jack was already a marksman growing up on a farm as a small game hunter, watching animals die, but he acquired a military qualification with the M1 carbine rifle, achieving expert status at 180 meters or 200 yards while he was in the Air Force. Jack wore a size 10.5 and would have had access to these older Wingwalker boots or military shoes when he was an aircraft supply sergeant in the U.S. Air Force. Jack also bootlegged liquor during the Prohibition when he was a teenager and avidly traveled the trains, making it to 28 states in a 2-year period by the time he was 17 years old. Jack was also known to kill family animals on a whim. Here is his ham radio operations. We see that he had a license from 1955 through 71, which encompasses those years we talked about in regards to Sherry Jo Bates and that teletype paper that was used. There's information from Moonlight on an underground radio and journalism group during this time as well that is operating out of Mare Island, or some type of a cryptography type getup in Vallejo during the reign of the Zodiac. And Jack also owned that teletype machine, which again used in ham radio, media, government, mob, and anywhere information is needed fast. Dennis did find the hood in the PA system in 2008, well after Jack's passing. So to have found this was obviously a shock and surprise. Dewhurst wants to liken the Zodiac symbol as a Rosicrucian cross. That is actually attributed to the likes of Freemasons, Aleister Crowley, there's that cult connection again, Aleister Crowley. Cross of the Secret Order of the Golden Dawn, which was adapted by L. Ron Hubbard, which is the Scientology side of it that I want to get into just a little bit. And of course, we have the hypnosis symbol that Jack used, which is definitely consistent with the Zodiac's profile. They did indicate that Zodiac was perversely in love with his mother, and Jack had always had a strange relationship with his mother. And Jack had his mother's first name, Flova, tattooed on his right arm beneath a heart. And Jack told Dennis she was the only woman worthy of being tattooed on him. Zodiac had some knowledge. We're definitely, how many more do I have here? Several. All right, we're going to have to pick that up where I left off, or I'm just going to have to.
We're going to have to get that next episode.
I still got 1 minute. Hold on 1 second here. I'm going to fly through these because most of the stuff I've actually talked about. So we have the hypnosis symbol. People can pause and read these slides as we go. The Pilot Razor pen was consistent with the Paul Stein writings. We did turn over some very used pens from Jack's belongings that was in a tin with that broken knife from Sherry Jo Bates that we talk about. He also, Dennis also found Eaton bond paper in Jack's storage shed. And there is a letter from Charles Tarrance saying that his father carried pre-cut lengths of rope shorter than 3 feet in his vehicle at all time that were not long enough to tie anything down. We do have this, again, we ruled out the 1972 Stevens Creek Ice Blue Chevy Impala, but we have interesting, who holds a gun to someone's head? That's just absolutely insane. Okay, I thought I could blast through it. We got through the cars I still need to do some work on, so we're going to come back with our next episode and discuss what we have going on in the way of communications that are starting to come out. We're going to be taking a look at the poison pen or the dripping pen card and the 340 cipher. So we will see you guys next week. I'm sorry I had to cut you off, Nolan, but we'll pick back up where we left off on the next episode.
Okay.
Oh!
you.